G'day, and welcome to another live session. And today we're looking at how do beginners improve in their drawing. If you have any questions about this, I'd love to have it on the chat and I'll do my best to answer it. Goodness, I should have cleaned my glasses before I started. I can barely see anything. So, when we start learning to draw, it's easy to think that, well, if we just keep practicing, we so often hear practice makes perfect. And, well, practice can make perfect, but it doesn't have to. We can spend a lot of time doing the same unhelpful things and actually not progress very far at all, or very quickly at all for that matter as well. And that can be very discouraging. So, how do we, when we're starting to draw, make sure that we get the best from the time that we put into drawing? And I think it's really important that we remind ourselves constantly that learning to draw is learning to draw is learning to accomplish a skill. And it's very helpful to think about how we learn any skill, particularly creative skills such as music, language, things like that, because I think there really are so many similarities that are more obvious when we're learning a foreign language or we're learning to play an instrument of some sort, learning to sing or whatever. It's much more obvious what's a helpful way to go about it than when we draw. And I think the other thing that perhaps is relevant is that when we're learning something such as an instrument or a language, most of the time we feel like we need to have some instruction, that we need to have someone giving us direction. Now, look, that's probably not as true now. I'm probably actually reflecting back on my pre-internet experience where you really did need someone to make sure you were hitting the keys on the piano correctly, holding the violin bow correctly, having the right accent with the language. Whereas, of course, online now there are lots of options of ways that you can get a lot of this input. What you can't get, though, of course, is someone actually seeing what you're doing and letting you know, is this right? Is this how it should be? And the problem when we don't do that or we can't get that is that we can keep doing the wrong thing over and over again forever because we don't know better and we don't know enough to know the problem that we have with it. So, how do we overcome that? Well, you know, I'm presuming that if we could do a course, if we had access to a course, access to an instructor, to a class, and we could afford it, that we'd be doing it rather than watching YouTube videos. So, um, but I think there are ways we can overcome. Um, yes, no, I'm self-taught, Chris, and so a lot of what I say comes from my experience and what worked for me. But it's also come from the fact that, while I've never gone to college and studied art, um, I am a high school teacher. Well, I was a high school teacher a long time ago. Not art, it was English and history. But as part of that learning, we learned how we learn. And I wasn't aware for quite some time as I began learning to draw that I was applying a lot of the things that I learned, a lot of the principles that I learned about how we learn without thinking. And this is why I often say, we haven't started the 12 points yet, but this is why I often say that, that on day one of when we all start to learn, we don't start in the same place. We all have different prior experience, possibly not prior experience holding a pen and drawing, but prior life experience. And for some of us, by happy chance for us, that sets us up with an advantage in learning to draw. And of course, for others, sadly, nothing has happened in their life that really prepares them in some way for the skills and the thinking that will be helpful when they learn to draw. And so, even though it's day one for two people, one of them is actually getting a head start because it could be that they learnt to observe very carefully for something where they had to observe carefully. And so they're further ahead. They have a head start on someone else. Um, but Chris, I mean, this journey in the last few years really has been one of discovery for me, and one that's been evolving as well. I'm actually planning to make a video this afternoon on the way of thinking that I've developed to understand the drawing process and how it has revolutionized my drawing, and how at the start it was just something that I thought was um, a technique that I applied in one way, and now it's the way I understand all of my drawing all the time, and it's hugely freed me up to, I think more expansively, more creatively when I work out how am I going to put the ink on the paper and what am I trying to achieve in doing it. And so it may or my teaching may or may not overlap with perhaps more traditional courses. I mean, I draw traditionally, I believe, in that I like things to look like what they are, and I want to capture a sense of realism. But my method is the one that I've worked out that has worked for me, and I feel that it's worked for me very quickly. I've really only been drawing. Um, well, I've really only been drawing since 2018. I began to draw on a trip, and then when I came back home, I kept drawing. But that was in pencil, and in the end, that wasn't freehand. That was gridding my reference and gridding my paper. If you look at my Instagram drawings, my big, really detailed architectural ones that have been drawn from stunning photographs taken by Paris photographers who kindly gave me permission to draw them and to use them. Um, um, Yeah, that's different to my freehand pen drawing that I'm doing now. I've really only been doing freehand drawing, pen or pencil, but pen for the last, 3, probably 3.5 years. So this is all still very new for me as well. So I'm kind of, I discover things and then I make a video saying, this has been really helpful for me. I hope it can be helpful for you. So um, just another question here. Did I start to draw with pen or something else? I started to draw with pencil um, because I actually started with art, though, oil painting. Believe it or not. I mean, I did art at school, and up until I was about 20, I did a few little experiments here and there. But yeah, I had a lot of issues, and it kind of derailed my doing anything. And then life got busy, jobs, family, kids, all that sort of stuff, working, mortgage, blah, blah, blah. So I was 50 when I started to be creative as an adult in this way, and it was with oil paint. And I did that for 10 years. And then I was 60 when I started to draw. But that was not freehand in ink. That was with pencil, and as I said, doing a lot of gridding from references most of the time for what I was doing, and then inking over the top of the pencil. That's my Instagram stories, drawings. So, the drawing freehand in ink, I partly did that to get rid of my perfectionism, because I felt that the better I was becoming at drawing with the pencil, the more perfectionistic I became. It was sort of like the better I could do, the standard I had to achieve kept going up too. And so I was always unhappy with what I was doing. I was just basically erasing more lines than I was leaving on the paper. And we had a trip to Europe planned in 2020, and I wanted to do some street sketching and maybe splash some watercolor on it. And I thought, oh, I don't want to be erasing so much. How can I learn not to do that? And I thought, well, if I draw directly in ink, and mind you, I was loving some of the ink drawings I was seeing on Instagram, really loving it. And I thought, well, if I can develop drawing in ink, that'd be great for the trip, and it'll kind of address my perfectionism, because if I can't erase it, I have to move on. And I think that's one of the really hugely important things I have discovered. I don't think it's one of these points, but that when I rob myself of the ability to keep erasing things to make it perfect before I could go on. I had to just keep going on. And what I learned was that mistakes don't matter nearly as much by the end, and that most of the time there are ways we can overcome them, hide them, or simply distract from them by the rest of the drawing happening. And so, and I then discovered there is a wonderful rhythm when we draw in the course of a drawing. From when we start, it's slower for all sorts of reasons that picks up speed as we go along. And the earlier things are plotting more and establishing proportions. And then as we move on, we're creating more effects and bringing everything together and developing a focus. Um, and part of the challenges that drawing with ink is at the start when I'm establishing, I can't put ink on the paper that's going to compromise my ability further on to develop effects. So I can't do lots of roughing outlines because I don't want them there at the end. So yeah, it's and so the way I draw has developed because of that. A lot of people say, why don't you kind of rough out the big shapes and then work down and divide them into the detail? Well, because that's fine. That's a good way if you're working with pencil. And at the end, you can erase all the roughing out marks that aren't quite right. But I can't do that. So that's why I draw the way I do, because it's been tailored for me, I suppose, and what I've been wanting to achieve. Let's have a look at a few of these questions or comments. G'day there, Dave. And when you get towards the outer parts of the picture, you shade it. You need to put on fewer and fewer lines. But I love it. I don't know if I. Well, you don't have to, Dave, but you can. I mean, it depends on the effect you want to create. But I like to go for a sense of realism. And in real life, when we look at something, what's right in front of us, which is usually the thing that has our prime attention, we see with more clarity. And the things to the periphery, we can see them there, although less and less as they move further away from the focus. We start to sense they're there rather than see them after as it moves further away. And so by keeping our lines lighter and looser around that periphery, we start to create the effect of reality, that we have a clearer focus, and then we have a sort of less clarity around the edges. So it's a technique for creating a realistic effect, if that's what we want to do. Okay, there are no rules. It always comes down to, what do I want to do? And we have to go beyond thinking that what I'm doing is copying a photo. I'm not copying a photo. I can't copy a photo. I'm drawing. I'm creating something that isn't there. But there's something about the image in the photo that I want to capture. But how do I capture it the best? What marks do I put on paper? How am I wanting my drawing to go beyond what a mere photograph can do? Okay. I think that's a really helpful way to think. I don't think that's one of the points either. But anyway, we will get to we'll start the 12 points in a minute. Like when you draw an aura around something, just to have a big, yeah. Or just for clarity as well. Just so that, but that, again, a very, very fine aura can actually reflect reality, can capture the sense of reality, because depending on the surface, the material, and the direction of the light, sometimes there's a tiny, tiny echo of light bouncing around the corner of an object that that we that we see. And so to draw that by not bringing all our ink together, but by leaving, with careful control, a very, very thin halo line, can be really effective, as well as making it easier to see what we're looking at. But you don't want it that thick, and just phase it out towards. Yeah, okay. Yep. So basically manipulating our technique so it becomes softer and more diffuse as we move out. And these are all ways of drawing, but they come first from thinking. It's not that what's the technique, it's what do I want to achieve in my finished drawing. And this is why I talk more and more, because this is something I've realized lately more and more I'm doing. And I've seen how helpful it is when I draw, is how do I want my finished drawing to look? And not in general terms, but actually to try and visualize in my head. I try and imagine I'm looking at my drawing, my finished drawing, and I'm thinking, What does it look like? What am I seeing? How have I put the marks on the paper to create the effect that I want? And then before I start, I experiment with the marks to just to see whether the technique of drawing that I'm thinking, is it going to create the effect I want? So these are all the things that I do, and I think it's very helpful to do. Again, I don't think that's one of the things on my list of 12, but to do. I know how to draw circles and lines smoothly. Why can't I draw anatomy? Do I have you have ideas as bodies? And I think there are a couple of issues with anatomy. And look, this isn't a strength area for me. Give me a nice neoclassical building any day. But I think the biggest problem with anatomy is that we can't get away with fudging it the way we can with most subjects. And the reason we can't get away with fudging it is because from the very moment we first open our eyes, we focus on faces and bodies. Because as a baby, as a child, nothing is more important to us than the parents who will keep us alive. And so we see people with a greater intensity, greater focus, and we just look at them more than we look at other things. And so what that means is we very early get this very intuitive sense of what a person looks like. And that takes into account the variety of the range of people, the shapes and the sizes and the way their features are formed. But we still have a sense of this is a real person, and no, this couldn't be a person at all. Or this person has a broken arm or a dislocated shoulder because it doesn't look right. We couldn't say exactly what's changed, but we know this isn't right. And when we draw, we get a lot of misshapenness if we're just drawing by outline, by shape. And I think this is important with anatomy, well, with drawing. When I draw, what's my focus? Am I focusing on capturing an outline for a shape, which is what I did when I was a kid, and I used to draw Scrooge McDuck and Bugs Bunny and the other cartoon characters that I liked? Am I just drawing an outline for a shape, or am I seeing a three-dimensional form that I'm trying to capture on my paper, even though my paper is only 2 dimensions and I only have a line? Well, I have ink. And that's the other thing. You see, it's so much more helpful to think of marks rather than lines. Lines are marks, but there's many more ways we can put the ink on the paper to create certain visual effects. And so if we're thinking three-dimensional form on my paper, how do I capture that three-dimensional form? And the first thing, I can't do that at all if I don't understand the form. And part of the problem with the form for anatomy is that it's covered in skin. So we have all these bulgy things inside of us that as we move, not shrink, well, they shorten or lengthen, and they bulge or they flatten out depending on how big our muscles are, I suppose. And that affects the way things look. And we also have joints that move in certain ways and can't move in other ways. And so again, there are directions that limbs can go and directions they can't go that we know intuitively if it's not right, and usually it indicates a horrible injury. If it's not a drawing, if it's in life, so someone comes off the soccer field with their leg going the wrong way or their ankle twisted or something. We know when it's not right, even if we don't know why. But the problem is we have this layer of skin. If everyone could peel their skin off so that the muscles were there, it would be easier to get a sense of the three-dimensional kind of bulges and what's happening with them. And we'd be more drawing the bulges. But because of the skin, we tend to focus on the silhouette line. And they come in and out in a certain relationship to each other, depending on the bulges of the muscles, but also depending on the angle that we're looking at them from, whether we're straight up or looking down slightly or straight up. But of course, the limbs are moved at all angles to us. So it ends up becoming an incredibly complex series of issues to have to juggle. And this is why probably I don't do anatomy. I don't draw anatomy because I'm so aware of why it's so hard. And it really is a specialty area to draw. I mean, I've done a little bit of figure of life drawing at times, and it's a lot of fun and it's great. But it's so hard because the human body moves so subtly, so easily according to what it's doing and where we're positioned in relation to it. And and um, yeah, it's just incredibly complex. And if we don't nail it, it doesn't look right. So what I would do if I were wanting to learn anatomy, and if you want to draw comics, then wow, you have to know your anatomy. It's all about anatomy and having the muscles in the right spot. Um, whether it's arms or chest muscles or leg muscles and hands and whatnot, fingers, how they move, how they look, allowing for variation of anatomy, all of these things. I'd really be studying anatomy, just studying it to understand it, understand the muscles and how they move, how they bulge, when do they lengthen or when do they compress, and all these things. I would really be studying that hard because it's a bit like understanding perspective. I think if you're doing buildings, and of course, perspective applies to everything, every subject. It's just that with buildings, it's easier to see if the perspective's not working properly, and therefore, it's kind of easier to learn with a subject that you can see more clearly whether it's right or not. Perspective applies. Perspective is just how something changes according to our viewing position of it. Doesn't matter whether it's a building or a mushroom. Um, Yeah, yeah, I'd be studying anatomy, trying to understand how the body works if you peel the skin off, and then that will help me when I see the body with the skin on to understand what's happening and therefore to see what's happening. Because if I understand it, it's easier to see it. Because I understand how perspective operates, I'm looking for it more intelligently. Well, not intelligently, but I have the advantage of I know what I'm expecting to find, and so it's easier to find it, and therefore it's easier to observe it more accurately. Therefore, it's easier to actually draw it accurately because I have an accurate understanding of it before the ink hits the paper. Most of the time, our drawings don't look the way we want them to. If we want them to look realistic, we think it's because of our technical skills. We think it's because I somehow just can't draw the right line. I would almost bet my house on that. 95% of the time, it's because we actually haven't seen it carefully enough. We're starting to draw before we've really taken on exactly what we're drawing. And so I'm drawing what I think it looks like. So in effect, there's more guessing than sort of coherent translation of reality onto the paper. Does that make sense? Um, let's have a look here. Right. Oh, thank you, Mr. Canada. I'm assuming you're Canadian, the Discord server. Yep, yep, yeah. Um, Actually, 3D models, you can find it, yeah. Ah, right, yes. I mean, you can get those little wooden 3D models just to help with posing and posture and stuff, but they're not going to be detailed enough. I mean, they obviously don't move. So yeah, that's great, Mr. Canada. Thank you for that. Um, Yes, yes, it's easy to draw limbs that look all distorted, isn't it? But if this is what just as if you want to draw buildings, you really have to come to understand perspective, particularly if you want to create architectural landscapes rather than draw what you see. Then you have to understand how perspective works. Um, because otherwise you're just guessing. And it's the same with anatomy. You have to have some, and this is why like Da Vinci and Michelangelo, the great painters of the Renaissance, began to realize that they had to understand the muscles to be able to draw them. They had to understand what was happening under the skin, pushing against the skin, if they were going to be able to capture the three dimensions accurately. So, and I would say particularly the arms because they usually come in so much into comics. Uh, okay. Why do you have morgues at your university? Medical, yeah, blah, 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 blah. Oh, morgues. Okay, I get it. Yeah. Yes, they did. Okay. So, let's start on some of these 12 points. I'm happy to interrupt and answer some questions if you had them. So please put the questions on the chat if you do. But when I'm looking at what has accelerated my drawing improvement, how can I draw buildings but not landscapes? Well, just leave out the landscape. um, um, yeah, or is that your point? It's hard to draw. You really can't draw buildings without landscapes. If you could kind of tell me exactly what you're after in that question, I can probably answer it better. But look, the first thing is um, we need to set regular times for any skill we want to learn. Learning is building, 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 building. And if there's too large a gap, what we've already built wears away. We forget about it. It disappears. And so now we can't build on what we did know because we don't know it, or we don't know it as well. And so now there's a lot of stuff in the end that we vaguely know, but haven't mastered any of it. So we need regular sessions. Now, how regular? Well, that depends on how much time you've got available, because we're all at different parts of the life journeys. Um, but but have a regular time, and maybe something will come up and you can't do it. Well, then I know I've missed it, and so now I know that if possible, I want to try and make that up or compensate for it in some way. So it doesn't mean that we can't be flexible, but it does mean we're more focused on how much time am I giving to my drawing. So we should actually put them on the calendar so that when someone phones up and wants us to do something, I'm looking and thinking, well, that's the time I was going to draw for an hour. So can I move that? And so we also give validity to our learning to draw as well. We say, look, this is a worthwhile thing. This is something I actually want to do. I'm getting serious at this. And it's going to come at the cost of other things because none of us have unlimited time and energy. So, um, and the other good thing about plotting time, or scheduling a time, is that we become aware that when I learn a skill, it's because I've decided to learn a skill, not whether I feel like doing it at any given moment. So I practice the piano because it's 6 a.m. and that's the time I practice the piano. I go to football training Wednesday night at 7 p.m. because that's what I do on Wednesday night at 7 p.m. I don't stop and think, oh, do I feel like going or not? No, I want to be able to do it. So I do it. I set the alarm. I put off having dinner till later on Wednesday night, whatever. It's the same thing with drawing that we have to do. And I'm just trying to, I don't think, there's something else. I don't think this is a point further down, so I'll say it now. Um, and that's shorter sessions work better than longer sessions. I think one of the biggest problems that drawing beginners do, I'll answer that question, Mr. Canada, too, in a moment. One of the biggest problems drawing beginners do is that they sort of set aside 2 hours to do a big drawing, a big complex drawing, and it's too big, it's too complex. There are too many things to have to think about and to handle all at once to be able to do any of them well at the stage they're at. And so they do spend 2 hours doing a large, complex, if I'm blunt, bad drawing. Now, unfortunately, they don't have a teacher there to point this out. And they may even have impressed themselves because it might look impressive in lots of ways. But what's happened is that so far they've learned how to do a drawing badly. And if I keep repeating that, I will become very good at drawing badly. And I'll become very good at not being able to see the mistakes I've made because in my thinking, well, this is how this looks when you draw it. And that's a real problem. And that then sets up something that we have to overcome further down the line. And that's why some of the other things that I talk about are so important. Yeah, I'll just answer Mr. Canada's question. No, I can't draw trees, bushes, and just Landscapes. Look, I think, have you seen my How to Draw Trees playlist, Mr. Canada? Because um, I think it actually holds the key for drawing nature. But trees are everywhere, and trees are often with architecture, and particularly grand architecture often have big grand trees close by. So, and really important when we draw is that all elements of our drawing are brought up to the same skill level. So if I draw buildings and there are sometimes trees, I have to make sure my trees are as competently drawn as my buildings are, or else they become, I don't know, they become like a singing group where one of the people is off key. Doesn't matter how much on key everybody else is, we're only going to hear the off key note of the one person who's off key. And so it's the same with our drawing. I think of, in some ways, a drawing is a bit of a stage set in a play, and we have the star and we have the supporting acts. If one of the supporting acts is hopeless, it detracts from our perception of the whole. So we do need to bring all the things up. Should I try to draw along with the videos? No, absolutely not. For two reasons. Um, for two reasons. Which one will I say first? No, I can't think of either of them. Uh, um, Firstly, look, the key thing, and this will be one of the points later, I think, the key thing is understanding the process, understanding what is the artist trying to do. I wouldn't watch any drawing videos at all where you can't see the reference. Okay? Because if you can't see the reference, it's like trying to learn a language and only hearing the foreign language and not knowing what it is in the original language. Okay? Because it's not saying the words, it's being able to understand the starting point and then translate it into something else. And if we don't understand what both are, then we can't have any insight into the process. So if I'm drawing along to a demo where the reference is off camera, and trust me, in 99% of the time, the reference will be off camera. They're not just drawing it magically, they're using something to draw it from. Whether it's actually a drawing they've done earlier or whether it's a photo, I don't know. But it just looks like the drawing appears. So therefore, all you can do at that point is copy what they're doing line by line with no understanding of why. But it's the why that sets you up to be able to draw yourself, to draw another drawing. I worked all this out when I began to get a few comments from some of my earliest videos saying, oh, look, I don't understand it. I copy, this drawing or that drawing. It looks really great. But when I go to do my own drawing, I don't know where to start even. It's like I'm suddenly hopeless, but I've done all these wonderful drawings. No, you haven't done these wonderful drawings. You've copied somebody else's drawings, which is a far easier skill than creating your own. And it's a different skill. Now, if you want to become a copyist, then copying is a great way to do that. And look, when we're at a very advanced level, copying the work of other artists can be a helpful thing to do to really help us examine their technique, whether it's painting or whether it's drawing. But at the beginner level, and I would say even the intermediate level, it's not helpful at all because it gives us no understanding. And that's always the key thing. I think this is this is another one of my points. So yeah, yeah. And even if you can see their reference, say in my videos, I always encourage people not to draw along with my video because you're not going to have time to look at the reference, to listen to my voiceover and trying to explain at least some of the points of understanding that are causing me to draw it the way I am, because you'll be so focused on looking at the end of my pen and exactly how the ink is going on the paper so you can copy it. So you'll actually be disconnecting from everything I've set the video up to give you. I don't have any drawing videos where you can't see the reference because I want you to be able to see what am I looking at to help me. Gosh, I'm sounding very pompous now, very worked up. But you know, I want you to see what I'm looking at so you can see the translation that happens from that reference into ink on the paper. Even for the things I don't have time to actually explain explicitly, you can see what happens. And of course, if you watch a lot of my videos, you can start to see over time how it happens for the same subject and so forth. And please, if you're finding this helpful, please hit the like button for me. It is incredibly helpful. And if you have to leave later on, because I last one of these I raved on for 2.5 hours, my wife can't believe how I can just look at a screen and talk nonstop for 2.5 hours, which I promise I won't do today. Um, but please come back to it and put it on in the background when you're doing some gardening or, washing up or whatever. And thank you. Someone else has hit the like button for me. That's very kind. Um, yes, yes. So copying doesn't equip us with the skills we need and will actually stop us developing the skills that we need, and ultimately will lead to discouragement because we'll think there's something wrong with us when we can't do our own drawings. But we've watched all these videos and we've done all these drawings because in our mind, when we have a drawing on the paper at the end, I've done a drawing. Well, no, that's not the same as having copied a drawing, you know, because when I copy a drawing, I don't have to have any of the understanding that the artist had who drew that. I don't have to. I'm not privy to any of his thinking. How will I translate this into marks and so forth? I'm just focused on the end of the pen, and the end of the pen actually doesn't draw our drawing. What's between here draws our drawing. It's our understanding, and this is why I keep in all my videos trying to explain my understanding. It's not as if there's just one way of understanding, and I think we'll get on to the second point that will fast track your drawing development and improvement if you're a beginner, and that's to work out where I'm aiming to be in the short term with my drawing. Okay, there is so much possibility. Imagine if I said, oh, I'm learning to play the piano. Oh, that's great. But then you discover that they go from playing the piano to playing around with the recorder, picking up a guitar for a bit, maybe going back to the piano. Like you say, hang on, this you can't do all this stuff at once. And yet, why with drawing do we think when we start to learn it? Yeah, I'll draw with a pen, I'll draw with a pencil, I'll draw some faces, I'll draw some giant eyes. I'm not sure what that's about. um, I'll do a couple of buildings. I'll draw a car, I'll do some doodles, whatever. Why do I think that might be helpful? I'll splash a bit of watercolor on some things because I can't do everything at once. I can't become good at everything at once. And the time I put into doing other things is going to stop me from learning whatever it is I really want to learn. I often talk about, and this is actually the third point, actually going deep rather than going shallow. You see, learning is a skill. Learning to learn something is a skill. When I was at teacher training for high school teaching, we learned how we learn so that as teachers, we could engage in that process with how we delivered our lessons. But one of the things we can learn or not learn is how to go deep. And I discovered this because of my 10 years doing oil painting, where I went deep in oil painting. And then when I began to draw, having done no drawing after 10 years of oil painting, half of them full time, I I realized that so much of the time I was actually drawing on things I learned in my oil painting. Techniques in my oil painting, obviously it wasn't a one-to-one correlation, but I realized I was adapting things I learned in going deep there in drawing. That's how my tree drawing techniques started, based on what I developed in my oil painting, in my understanding of the process of painting tree canopies. I began to think, how can that now adapt to using a pencil and a pencil line? I'd never kind of did like fuzz with the graphite. So that was but if we go deep, we learn how to go deep, and we also learn things like patience and concentration in a way. Now, if I do a little bit of everything, what I learn is how to stay shallow in everything. And so I won't go deep in any of the areas that I play around with. So at the start, focus and going deep in some skills is going to really pay dividends in the long run. Um, that was the third point. But the second point was to really work out what I want to go deep in. So, do I want to draw with pencil or do I want to draw with pen? And the importance is that there are lots of things that are different depending on which I want to learn to draw with. If the obvious one, if I draw with this, I can erase things that aren't in the right place. If I draw with this, I can't. Well, that means I'm going to have a different way of thinking and of drawing straight off. Which one? Now, I can make different marks with this. I can get a very sharp edge. I can get a very fuzzy one. I can also get pencils that are light or pencils that are dark. With this, the ink is the same color throughout. I can buy different thicknesses of pen, but it's the same throughout. And and I get a very stark contrast. I can have less contrast. I'm very dependent on hatching for grayscale. I can create grayscale simply by the pressure I use. So because of the variety of marks I can make, my thinking, my approach is different whether I'm drawing in pencil or in pen. So it's important that we know what we're doing, but it's also important, I think, to focus on not just the one medium, but on the one subject again, because then we learn to go deep. Then we learn, we get skilled, we get experience in really focusing on understanding something to a high standard, to really observing. When I observe, I mean, I said before that I think a lot of our problems in drawing is that we haven't observed what we've needed to observe. But the more familiar I become with a subject, the obviously the more I see it from all angles, in whatever range that this subject has, and therefore I build knowledge to know what to expect to see, and so it's easier to see it. And the more information I can get in my head that's accurate more easily and more quickly, the greater chance I've got now of translating it into ink on the paper or pencil on the paper. But if I go from drawing a grand architectural statement to a horse, to a bunch of flowers, to a cute puppy, I, I'm just having a grab at this, a grab at that. I'm not building cumulative understanding of the form of any one thing. And so I'm always starting at a very low down level of understanding and therefore my potential for my drawing. And again, you see, this is a bit like, this is the staying shallow thing. I haven't learned to go deep. And so I just learn to stay shallow and to unfortunately possibly think that my drawing looks good, because having only drawn one puppy, I don't know enough about drawing puppies and how puppies actually look on the paper or look in life and therefore on the paper, to really understand that my puppy is very inadequate in so many ways, and that people who really draw puppies, and that's their sweet spot, want to cry when they see my puppy. The way I sometimes want to cry when I see buildings that are just physically impossible because of the perspective errors in them. But can I say, if we're an artist rather than an architect, and if we're an artist rather than someone, say, creating landscapes for video games and stuff, I don't need to understand perspective if I can learn to just see what's there and draw that accurately. But it's easier to see what's there, as I said before, if if um, if I have an understanding of what to expect, which is what understanding perspective theory gives me. I'll just have a quick look at a few of these. Um, okay. Yep. Yep. It sounds like you've caught on, Mr. Canada. Yep. So the best way to use my videos is just watch the video. Don't think about drawing yourself. Don't have a pen in your hand. Just watch the video and listen to the connections that I make out and try to see ones that I don't bring out. Like be constantly looking back and forth from the reference to the drawing, from the reference to the drawing, from the reference to the drawing, and if I'm making marks and you can't picture what the photo looks like there, look back at that. Like always be looking to see how is he translating this, and if he's explaining it to me, um, can I see the link between what he's saying and what he's doing? Because this is letting you into my thinking, and it's your thinking that you need to develop. And you can use my thinking as a starting point. You might decide that my thinking and my, therefore, technique is trash and develop your own. Fantastic. This is the way our creativity works. But listening, understanding my thought processes can be a great stimulus for you coming to understand your own thinking and the freedom, the creative freedom you have to draw any way you want, if that makes sense. When I try a stone wall in perspective, I don't really know how to represent those stones accurately in the distance. Yeah, look, I've got quite a few videos on drawing stones, stone walls, both natural stone formations, but also yeah, dry stone walls and things. So they'll be on my drawing the effective detail playlist if you want to have a look at those. But with the distance, see, that's a different thing again. When I'm trying to capture the effect of what I'm seeing, things look different. The effect of how they look, the thing hasn't changed, but the effect of how it looks different if it's a long way away. Excuse me. If it's a long way away. So I'm not just drawing the stone, I'm trying to capture the effect of the stone at this distance. And um, this is going to come into the video that I think I'm going to make this afternoon if I can still talk when I get off the camera. That we're always trying to capture the effect of something, but the effect of something close up, part of that effect is greater clarity. We see more detail. Something's further away, it's exactly the same object, but the effect is we don't see it as clearly, or as if we're using color, we don't see it with the same depth of color. There's a fading of the color and a fading of the value as things go further away, which is relevant even in drawing if we're producing grayscale through hatching. So everything changes when it gets further away, even if it's exactly the same as something closer to us. And these are all the ways we have to understand the process of what's happening. It's not just, oh, well, there's a car here and there's a car there. Yeah, no, but this car's closer and that car's further away. So how do I capture that feeling? Now, obviously, the size should be an indication, but with things such as trees, where they're not all the same size, then that's not the same visual clue that we get with cars when one's larger and one's further away. The further away one is clearly further away. Okay. Uh, Great. Can I ask about texture? I have a bit of difficulty representing the different textures of buildings like wood, stone, concrete. So, okay. Yep. Well, look, I only draw with a pen. Sometimes I use these. But mostly I draw with a pen. And so again, that playlist, Nina, the playlist on drawing the effective details, all the things you've talked about, leaves, grass, gravel, bricks, tiles, pavers on streets, yeah, all those things are in that playlist. And so there are demos of drawing all those things, but also talking about, for each of those, how I'm thinking when I'm looking at my reference and I'm working out how will I translate this into detail on my drawing, into marks on my drawing. One of the big mistakes people make is try and draw more than we see. And by more than we see, I don't mean what we can see, because that's the problem with a photo. It captures all the detail with such clarity. And we start to draw the more obvious parts, and then we don't know where to stop. And before we know it, let's take bricks. Where's a picture of a? Just see if I can see a picture of a house made of bricks. I've got all my scrap. Okay, this will do. You might have seen the video. This was an extreme perspective video, but this is an old stone cottage. And when you look at it in life, the photo, I mean, not the cottage, but both actually, you can see the large stone blocks. Now we can see them. Now, if we don't draw them, then that makes the house look like it's, I don't know, cement rendered, like it's got very smooth, like, yeah, that we don't see any indication of its construction. But if I draw all those lines in, visually, they're going to put a large amount of ink on the paper that has a visual grab that we see really easily and clearly, that goes way beyond what we see here. And so, when we look at this, we can see enough to understand that it's made of stone blocks. But if we draw them all in, all I'll see is the grid of the stonework, which isn't the impression we get in life. And I think this is the problem. So we're not trying to draw the detail, as in all the lines. We're trying to capture the effect of that detail in life. And this is where the translation process that I talk about starts to become more what's the word? Creative, because I'm actually going to be drawing in a way that, possibly even we don't see, not so much in this case, but if I think of leaves, the way I draw the effect of detail is to draw marks that you cannot match up in any way with the photo. And yet the effect it creates conveys a realistic sense of leaves. And so, yeah. But look, that playlist, there's about 80 videos on it. I mean, how do you draw crowds of people? Well, the ones closer, you draw in some detail. But the further away they become, the more we're trying to draw the effect of a crowd of people, not draw every little face and every little bent elbow and every handbag over the arm or whatever. So I can't draw anymore without basically just drawing the effect of detail all the time. So, yeah, is that helpful, Nina? So check out that playlist, because that shows you how this looks in as many different contexts as I've drawn, and I've realized this is what I'm doing. Okay. When trying to draw like a stone wall in perspective, I don't know really how to represent those stones accurately in the distance. Look, I think a very helpful thing when it comes to drawing non-geometric shapes in perspective is to put that shape in a box and then draw the box. I mean, and we can literally draw the box if we rough out in pencil first and then we ink over the top, or we finish in pencil, then we can actually draw the box first. And now I draw the box in the right perspective. So I sort of draw the wall in perspective, and I draw a box that fits in with the vanishing points. And now I can see how that stone needs to become distorted to look right. And then I do it. I mean, I still do this in my head when I draw arches in perspective, when I'm looking at a series of arches that go down a wall that's sloping away from me. I actually frame half a square and picture the curve in each quarter. I mean, you never get too good to not work hard at it. I mean, it partly depends. If it's a long way away and it's just very on the proof result, I won't. But like if it's a central thing, then yeah, I'll in my head visualize the framing for that just to help me position, and I'll work out where the halfway point of the two boxes of the semicircle are, because the more the wall is angled away from me, so the less wall I see because of the angle, then the further along the halfway point will be as well. So I actually do a little kind of breakdown in my head of what's happening. Yeah. Again, if you haven't hit the like button and you've joined us, please do. That helps me as much as I hope this is helping you. Um, Eyes the window to the soul. Absolutely. Sander, thanks for the video, Stephen. In the Netherlands, my sister-in-law comes from the Netherlands, and we've had a wonderful time. We went to Amsterdam on our last trip, and which was before COVID, and I couldn't believe how beautiful it was, and that I had never heard about how beautiful it was. Absolutely lovely city to be in. We only had like a couple of days there, but thanks, Sandy. Yeah. Where were you able to find the art? Okay, you're talking to Anna there, Mr. Canada. Thank you. Hey there, Rational Toilets. There's probably a story there. Dave, I started out wanting to learn ink drawings, but I progressed from simple compositions with pencil, and now I try some added watercolor and colored lines for line work. Still haven't decided. Yeah. Great. Yeah. Look, we change and develop, and there's I'm not, when I say focus down, I'm not saying that we have to stay there, because often we become aware of possibilities that we weren't aware of when we started, so that's all fine. But whatever we're doing, we go deep, and if we shift, then we go deep in that. But we resist the urge to jump from one thing to another every time we see a new brand of this or a new brand of that, or worse, just because it's on special, so we buy it, because it's cheap. No, no, that's the worst reason to buy art materials, just because it's cheap. If it's not something that you are wanting to use with what you're doing or planning to do, then don't buy it. It just becomes a distraction. Yes, thank you. Name like nobody else. Oh, my pleasure, Marion. Yeah, yeah. Yes, teeth. The teeth cause such a problem in drawing portraits for that reason. If you kind of draw all the detail, it looks a bit freaky. And yet we can see the teeth as well, but it's drawing them so that visually they sit back uh, um, with the same level of kind of clarity that happens in life. Like we see them, and there's often the darkness in there, and there is a dark line between them, but we're really seeing the other features more. So we have to show restraint, because most of the time when we look at someone's face, we're not looking at their teeth, we're looking at their eyes, and we're seeing this part, and we have a sense of this. And so therefore, we want to give an indication of the teeth, but we only want to draw the effect of the teeth with the prominence that we get when we're really focused somewhere else. See, it's all to do with how we think and understand the drawing process. And if we have that framework, it actually tells us what techniques to use. It tells us, it guides us to the choice of marks, because I have an understanding of what I'm trying to do. So I'm never saying that my way is the only way, but it's certainly a way, and it's certainly been helpful for me. And you can see how my way of thinking looks in my drawings, because our drawings always come from our way of thinking. And when our drawings are inadequate, as I said, it's not because I haven't actually learned how to draw a line. It's far more because I don't yet have a developed understanding of a drawing process that guides me into a certain continuity and consistency that starts to develop my style. And when people sort of say, "Oh, I haven't got a drawing style. Every drawing I do looks like someone else has done it." Well, unless of course they've been copying other people's drawings, then that explains that. But otherwise, I think it's because they haven't got a way of understanding what they're doing when they draw. And so they're grabbing here, guessing here and here, because it's our process, our understanding of drawing process, that gives us consistency and means then that we actually really do start to build. And that doesn't mean we can't change. But if we know what we're doing, then we can actually make a rational decision, conscious decision to change what we're doing because we've become aware of more possibilities. Yeah, that was a great comment. Thanks about the teeth. How can I get good proportions if I see the reference from phone, not from print photo? Thank you. Afrizal, look, I would have hoped my videos kind of help you with that, because even though I print this out, I'm not measuring it. I'm drawing it freehand, and so I'm looking at this and looking across. I'm not very good with the whole reverse thing. Looking at this, looking across, looking at this, looking across, looking at this, looking across, back and forth, which you can do with a phone just as much. It's all about focusing on what we need to focus on in order to draw accurately. I do have quite a few videos on drawing freehand in proportion, because we only get one chance. And for me, it's partly about learning to I call them positioning marks. You can call them, they're often just little dots. Sometimes there's a few little dashes, but this is where I think this corner is going to come out to, or this is where I think this edge of a window is going to be in relation to a column. I put the dot, and then I sit back and I look at, and I visualize the window going through that dot, or I visualize the corner of the building going to that point, and I visualize it against everything I've already drawn. And then I look at the reference again, and I'm thinking, is it looking right? And if it is, it depends exactly what I'm drawing and what effect I'm going for, like where it is in the drawing as well. But then I often do a very light line, really handy to learn how to actually get lines of various intensity. With the pens I use, these Copic multi-liners, I find that if I hold them more upright, then I obviously get the 0.1, in this case, millimeter line. If I really tilt at an angle, I can get a very kind of like scratchy line, which I'll often do as a first indicator of, helps me then to visualize, is this still looking right? Because if not, I then put a final line in to the left or right, or adjusting that first scratchy line according to greater accuracy from a reference. So all these things, but learning to see the proportions in our reference, whether it's a photo, whether it's in front of us in life, is a skill. Like observation is the skill we need to work on at the start, more than drawing straight lines or circles freehand. I mean, honestly, I look at so many videos and I just think there's so many pointless exercises that people do and probably feel quite accomplished and probably fill whole books doing lines. Look, obviously being able to draw a brisk, short, straight line is very helpful. Being able to draw an accurate curve is very helpful. But in the scale of things, far more helpful to learn what we need to see in a reference if we're to have a chance of drawing it accurately. Because it doesn't matter how many books of straight lines and circles and squiggles and little cross-hatching patterns I've done, if I ain't seeing what I need to see to draw it accurately, I'm wasting them and just probably going to get discouraged and feeling like I've missed the plot. And in some ways, that's the truth. But it's not because you're not capable of understanding the plot. You've just started in an unhelpful place. And this is why I hope these 12 points will be helpful. Oh gosh, we've done 3 of them in an hour. My wife will be home at I think about 12. I think she's hoping I'll be finished when she gets home. Okay. Um, uh, yep. More of an expressionist style than hyper realistic. Yeah, great. Yep. Right medium for the job. And you see, that's true, Dave. Right medium for the job. But I can't know what that is until I know what my job is. Until I'm visualizing how I want my drawing to look. Stylistically, how it's going to look. Because then I can choose the right media to do it with, and then the right technique with that media. It sets me up. Once I've answered the big questions, how am I wanting my drawing to look at the end from this reference? This reference I think of all references as springboards, as a starting point that now I combine with my creativity to create something that's different. Again, I think we have a lot of we learn lots of bad habits in drawing when I think I'm copying the drawing, and that the close the more exact my drawing looks like a photograph, the better a drawing it is. No, what usually happens is we capture all the weaknesses of a photo and we emphasize them. So a lot of two-dimensional. I see a lot of pencil two-dimensional portraits on social media that are going for photorealism, but in the end they look very flat. Why is that? Well, because photos actually are very flat looking. And when I try and, when I try and copy the photo exactly, I copy that weakness. Whereas the pencil and the techniques available with the pencil give me the opportunity to put the three dimensions back into my drawing or create the effect of three dimensions. But instead of using the strengths of my medium, instead, I'm using it to lock into place in my drawing the weaknesses of the photo. But of course, my drawing will never compare more favorably than the photo if I compete on the same terms. I sometimes have people say, "Oh, I like your drawing more than the photo. I thought the photo was pretty ordinary, but your drawing looks great." And it's because as artists, we have the possibility to bring something out of the photo. And that's why I think of the photo as a starting point. And again, we start to draw too quickly. We have our photo and we just start to copy instead of thinking, what am I trying to draw? How am I wanting my drawing to look? And that will guide all the decisions then about what to use and how to use it, when to use it. So we we want to sit with our reference for a few minutes, even in a short drawing session, and just picture in our head after we've looked at it, how am I imagining my drawings looking? If I don't know what technique I'm going to use, if I'm drawing a tree and I don't know how I'm going to do the leaves, I don't want to put my pen on the paper before I start, you know. But I can do it perhaps on a scrap bit of paper, and I can do it on a scrap bit of paper and start exploring, and that may help me work out, the marks I'm thinking of. Are they going to create the effect in my drawing that I wanted to create to capture the detail of the reality? Okay. Thank you so much for the tips. My pleasure, Nina. Check out the plays and practice when to stop. Yes. Yeah. Do I have any videos or plays about drawing water? I have this drawing I've been avoiding because the water part has stumped me. Ha ha. I have a couple, not many. I have a couple. They're probably in the drawing the effect of detail, because again, we can't draw water. We're drawing how water looks, which is the effect of water. But you see, there is no way to draw water, because water, the light in a given scene will be really important for drawing water, because it varies so much, and whether the water is still or moving. Because I'm not drawing water, I'm really drawing the effect of light on the water, reflection on the water, things under the water being seen through it, the movement of the water, and all of these things. It's very much drawing the effect. Um, it's like I often find it's more. And look, I don't draw a lot of it because it's just you know I guess it doesn't interest me as much as say drawing. If I'm drawing nature, I'd rather draw a bush scene, or I like drawing street scenes and things, and I certainly like drawing architecture. But it comes down to I'm seeing something and I'm not drawing that thing. I'm capturing the visual impression of it that we get, that we have. So again, according to what I'm using, how do I do that? And it's different for every drawing because it does depend on the lighting and the movement and the distance I am from it, all these things. So there is no way, but the beauty of this is we draw everything the same way. If I have an adequate understanding of the drawing process for me, it will apply to anything I see at all. Now, that's not saying that it won't be more difficult to apply to some subjects than others. Some subjects may take a lot of time for the techniques I've used to express whatever I'm looking at, translated through my understanding of what I'm doing when I draw. But the fundamental approach will be the same as if I were drawing a simple cube. It's just that, in this case, it's going to take more time to put that deep. And I think that's probably why I don't draw water, because of the way I do it and using the pen line and hatching, water almost always is going to take a great deal of time. Actually, I did do water a little while ago in a drawing. Let me just see. It may just be at the top here. Although I honestly, I mess these up so much. Oh, no, I don't know. No, I'm just talking so I haven't run off anywhere, but I don't know that maybe it's on this side. No, they're all trees and things. No, they're all trees. Oh, look here. This is not what I was looking for, but it is water. So I actually did this because someone I think they basically challenged me to try and draw clouds with a pen. And so you may not have seen this. This is, sorry, just a bit dizzy here for a moment. I have long COVID and I live with lightheadedness sometimes when I jump up. But this is like a cloud, but it is a beach, like it's a headland. And so this is how, if we just take away the I think not very successful cloud, you can see how I've drawn the surf with the breaking waves across the middle from some distance away. But that's not how you draw waves. That's how I drew these waves at this distance in this light with this pen. It always comes down to what marks will translate the scene into reality. And if you've just joined me, please hit the like button. That really helps me out as well. And I hope you go back and listen to the hour and a quarter that you've missed at some stage when you've got time to pop me on in the background. I'm just having to scroll back to get. Yep. Nina, clever tip for the archers. Yep. Glad it was helpful. Specials, how they get you. Yes. Shaya, hello. I found your secret to drawing overwhelming detail video out of nowhere today, and I watched it to the end. I really love it, and glad I could catch you live. Yeah, look, Shaya, I love that video too. it's my breakout video. It's had almost 2 million views, and it's been very beneficial for my channel. It went ballistic a couple of years ago, and it's stayed most days. It's my #1 video still. And so, I think like 55,000 people have subscribed to me from that video. The numbers are just, from my point of view, unbelievably huge. And the algorithm thinks it's going to be useful for people. So I'm really glad you found me through it, and that you check out some of the other things that I have to say. That video is from my point of view, quite an early video. And I actually think I talk about that subject far better because in a more developed and more refined way. Um, in fact, about a month after that one went crazy, I redid it, um, breaking it down to 5 points in a much clearer way, drawing a similar scene. I mean, those flowers were just our front yard needed to be let. We had some enormous trees taken out. It was very bare. It all grew up with weeds. I wasn't able to work on it at the time. I planted all these cosmos flowers just all over the front yard to basically fill the yard so the weeds wouldn't be there. And they were what I drew. So I had quite a few photos of different positions. And so I used not the same reference, but a similar one. And yeah, I thought it was a much better video. And, it's done well, but it hasn't been picked up the way that one has been. So it is interesting seeing how the channel works and how videos work. But yeah, I'm very grateful for that video and for how helpful it's obviously been for people, because that's what the algorithm does. The algorithm doesn't care about me. It wants to give you videos that you want to watch. And so that's my challenge, is to make videos that are helpful enough for people to want to watch them. And look, if you are watching this, one of the 25 people right now watching, if you've never shared one of my videos with friends who draw, please do. Because that's a way you can give some love back to me. That would be great. So yeah, don't underestimate, if you want to do something nice for me, how beneficial that is, because that actually counts a lot in terms of the algorithm's assessment of how useful is this channel, is people sharing the videos, probably more than anything else. So please, if anyone draws or might think of drawing, find a video of mine that you found helpful and send it to them. Send them the link. You might want to speed things up if you don't. Yeah. Oh, well, I guess I've upset her before. She knows me. Normally, sometimes I do these my time at night, and she just goes to bed, and I just slip in quietly and try really hard not to wake her up, because if I do, she'll say, "What time is it? How long did you go on and on for?" Okay. Biggest fear is training scars and ingraining bad habits. Yeah. And look, I think that is an issue, Dave. Goodness, you've been here since the start. I think that is an issue that that the mistakes that we tolerate, we will never overcome. And we can tolerate them, I guess, for two reasons. One is I just can't be bothered. But the worst one is that I don't realize that what I've drawn is not capturing what I'm wanting it to capture well enough. And I become used to seeing things this way. And then it becomes, even if someone tries to point things out, it becomes hard for me to see what they're seeing, because I've got so used to seeing that this looks like this, and I can't see it with fresh eyes. Seeing our drawings with fresh eyes is a really useful thing to do after we've done a drawing, particularly if it's been a complicated, larger, more committed drawing. And the best way to see it with different eyes, there are three ways I do it. One is and I used to do this with my paintings, I hold them up in front of a mirror and it just flips it. And just seeing it the same but different lets me disassociate from any mistakes that I got used to as I was doing it. To see it in a flip state, suddenly, oh wow, that perspective line is not right, is it? But I got used to seeing it appear as I created the painting. But flipping it lets me see it. A very similar thing, and I do this when I do demo drawings, which is probably about 4 or 5 a week, is I stand up and I look down through because I film with an iPhone, I look through the top of the phone, because instead of seeing it like this big, I now see it that big, and shrinking it lets me see it all with fresh eyes. It sort of like condenses everything, and I see the whole thing all at once rather than sort of looking to my eyes around different parts of it. And it lets me see things that aren't quite right or aren't working it more easily. And yeah, not just things that are wrong, but things that could be developed better. So when it's shrunk down and I see the whole thing at once, it often helps me think, I need to darken some values here or here. I need to make some adjustments. So yeah, the other way to get fresh eyes is to the next day look at it like straight off. Like don't look at it, don't half look at it, but like even if it's a drawing, if it's not a painting, but if it's a drawing, leave it on your workbench face down, and then come in the next morning and turn it over and just see it like bing. So what that means is we disassociate ourselves from the memory we've built up the day before, because we've done other things, we've had a sleep, we've had dinner, whatever, had a shower, had coffee. And so it's the closest I can come to seeing my drawing with fresh eyes, is to have a separation from when I slowly built that drawing up, getting used to how it looked and thinking that it looked okay. So those three ways, very important. And it can really help us kind of, and of course, the other way is there's a fourth way, is to ask a friend. And you find someone and you say, look, I don't want you to be nice. I don't want you to be kind. I want you to be merciless. And if you see something not quite right, if something feels out of place, tell me. And you don't even have to know why it doesn't feel right, but just tell me, because that will help me have some direction to work out how to improve my drawing. I'll just do point 4. Whatever you're wanting to draw and however you're wanting to draw it, whatever materials you want to draw, start simple. Don't start complex. I can't believe with some of my drawing students how the complexity of what they're trying to draw, and then drawing after drawing after drawing, they've drawn it badly. They've drawn it with the same sorts of perspective errors, texture errors, just unhelpful things over and over again. There is no point doing large drawings that take a lot of time badly at the start. Well, we don't ever want to do that. But if I start simple, then I can master that more easily. And now I've got a secure foundation to build on. Like, again, think of juggling. How do you learn to juggle? You don't get 7 balls and start. No, you get 1 and you just throw it up and down, and then you get 2. I've never done it, but I've watched people learn. And I think my son taught himself to juggle just a little bit when he was a teenager. And you throw 1 up and 1 up and 1 up, and you just get used to having 2 balls in the air, but 1 hand devoted to each. And you get used to doing and then you start to throw them so that you catch them in different hands. So in other words, you learn the fundamental skill on a very small scale, and you don't move on until you've nailed it. If I can't throw this up and down and catch it every time, there's no point having 2, and there's no point trying to crisscross them, let alone 3. Now, I might nail this 1 ball quickly. I might only need to do that for 5 minutes. I think, well, I could do this the rest of my life, so I'll get 2 balls, and then blah, blah. But at some point, and this point will be different for all of us, because we all have different starting points because of prior life experience on day 1 of drawing. But we think, okay, we will all hit a point, though, where we just can't have an easy momentum. But suddenly now I have to actually bring my faculties to bear. I need to bring my endurance to bear. I need to bring my ability to not do as well as I've been doing to bear. But we need to find that point by starting simple in whatever subject and whatever techniques we want to use, and then work out where it starts to become more difficult in terms of what we produce. And then we need to start staying in those places for longer. But I see so many problems because people want to start at the end. And if you have a subject that you love, such as architecture, then the things I want to draw are going to be the examples of that subject that really excite me. Grand architecture, maybe, or modern architecture, whatever. But they might be a great place for enjoying architecture, but they're not a great place for starting to learn to draw. Okay. And not just simplified subjects, but simplified poses or positions. So if I'm drawing architecture, then the simplest, I can get a simple. Where's that quantity? Here it is. Okay. So this is a very simple house to draw, but it's not a simple viewing position. So I would say draw this house straight on. So it is a box. Because if I can't draw it in a simple straight on position well, I'm not going to be able to do this well. So I start with the simplest viewing position as well as a simple subject. And if I nail it, if the proportions are all accurate and it looks good, then I can start to play around with the positioning of this simple subject. I can start to go high looking down, low looking up, from an angle, seeing two sides at once and 2-point perspective and all of that. But I don't start there. I set myself up to succeed when I choose simple subjects from simple positions. The size, draw smaller, not larger. I think, and equally shorter drawing sessions, not longer drawing sessions. And the reason is, and I do have a video on this, is that I think we have it depends a little on what the area is, but we have a learning cycle. Whatever it is, we have a series of things that we have to do to kind of like have a learning experience in that. And with drawing, it's getting a reference, doing a drawing, and then comparing the two to see how we've gone. Well, I've gone a bit off script with this one, but and then working out what have I learned and where do I go next? Do I stay in this place? Do I try and do a house that looks more like a house and less like a tree? Whatever. So I critique what I've done, and now I do it again. So that's the learning cycle. That's the cycle. Get a reference, I do a drawing, I look hard, I work out what needs to change in my drawing, and then I work out, will I draw it again or draw something similar or what? And the drawing cycle stays the same whether I do a 10-minute drawing cycle, which is obviously a much simpler subject and a much simpler drawing, or a 2-hour drawing cycle. Obviously a much more complex subject, much more complex drawing. But I really don't learn more in the 2-hour drawing session because it's going through the cycle. In fact, I can easily learn less because I'm overwhelming myself with more things that I can possibly deal with critiquing at the end. And so in fact, I finish the drawing and I just move on. I don't go back and look at it again, which is essential because it's what I've just done that will determine what I go on to do and give me direction in that going on. Or maybe I need to go back. Maybe I need to go back to what I was doing before because clearly I've forgotten that and I realize that. The other thing that I think is very helpful and has been for me, and it's been for me because I make videos when I mostly draw these days, and that's have some time pressure. Because I found the time pressure stop me getting bogged down. If I'm making a video, I don't want it to be longer than it needs to be, because that's unhelpful for all sorts of reasons in terms of YouTube and how it works and what people will watch and blah, blah, blah. And so therefore, I'm usually trying to draw fairly briskly. And my natural tendency is to get bogged down in being overly cautious. And so the time pressure has just pushed me to take more risks with the marks I make. And I've learned to think, look, what's the worst that can happen? If it's only a 20-minute drawing, I'll start again if it's, but like I'll just keep going unless I make an abysmal mistake on the first line, which almost never happens. I won't start again. I'll push through. And if the mistake is too obvious, I'll turn the video into a dealing with mistakes video, because that's something we all have to learn as well. So, but I found having a time pressure has just pushed me to develop a less uptight approach and reaction when things don't quite go right. And I've become more brisk with my marks and so forth. Very helpful, very helpful. Yeah. Well, that's 4 of the 12. Let's have a look. Oh dear, I think I'm I'm very far behind in these questions. And I keep losing where I'm up to. Dave does 2 by 2 inch compositions from the reference photo before I start. Yep, great. And it's also a way of warming up hand-eye coordination too. I'm not doing my mark experimenting sketches as a warm-up, but it serves as a warm-up, which is really helpful. It's fine. It's not too much. I'll take it because I have no clue what I'm doing. Not sure what you mean by that. You did notice those things when trying to figure it out before. I think are the reason why I got stumped. Good. Thank you. Ooh, clouds. Yes, clouds are difficult. But what we have to do is stop thinking of them as clouds and not be trying to think, how do you draw clouds? Because there is no way to draw anything. We draw, we put ink on the paper. For these clouds, what will work best with this light in? And it's not just these clouds, but it's these clouds in this scene. And so the clouds might be the main event. There might be 1 inch of land silhouetted down the bottom and then 12 inches of dramatic storming clouds. Well, I'm going to draw clouds very differently there to a scene where it's reversed and the clouds are a tiny part of one part of the sky. So we need to get out of our head, how do I draw X? And instead think, what am I trying to do when I draw? And for then this drawing, what's going to work best with all the things that are in it? Because it always changes. It always changes. And when I think, oh, I know how to draw leaves, sadly, what that means for most people is they stop looking at the leaves in the reference and they start to draw some sort of generic leaf pattern that doesn't really work. It ends up looking like a pattern. But they get used to equating this pattern with leaves, and they don't see it as being as unhelpful as someone else without the tolerance for this leaf pattern they use will see it. Hello, Alif, is it? I'll just up the light on my screen. Oh, I can actually read what you've written now. Great. Thank you, Alif. That's very kind of you to say. Thanks, Dave. Always put a like. That's how you know you've watched the video. Good idea. Did you come? Algorithm has a bias for Australians, and why not? Why not? Did I come just at the end? Oh, look, I don't know. Gosh, I've been going for an hour and a half, but I'm only up to point 4 of the 12 points. Hi there, Oz. Yeah, well, I'm still going. If you have a question, you can ask it. Mr. Canada shared my channel with someone recently. Wonderful. Make sure you drink lots of water. Yes. If I do make a video this afternoon, I'll probably croak all the way through it. Um, Nina, I study architecture and I've shared your channel. Wonderful. In fact, I've had some people say that they're architecture students and their lecturers have shared my channel with them, which is very kind, very, very nice to hear. As someone who almost did architecture when he left school, but did teaching instead. Right. Okay. Oops, what's happening with my phone? Oh, it's all right. Rotate the picture and go a few steps back. Okay, this is, I presume, ways of seeing it with fresh eyes. It's really, really helpful to do this at the start. Writers do the same way with revisions. Put it away. Yep, yep, yeah. Getting some separation from what we've just done is a great way to see. Um, Okay. Are we going to have a Q&A? Well, we're sort of having a Q&A. Yeah, that's right. This is it as well. So people just ask questions and I intersperse them with the answers that I'm doing. How do I improve at drawing while having fun? Um, that's the 12th point. The 12th point is have fun. Now you know how it ends, because having fun is important if we're going to improve. We have to get some satisfaction. And for most of us, the way we get satisfaction is I'm now just making the screen not as bright because it's starting to dazzle my eyes. The way we have fun is to feel that we're making progress, to feel that we're improving. So it's really important that we draw in a way that we maximize our opportunity for success. And that we get to see improvement. And again, I think if we do like smaller drawing sessions that are less ambitious and are more deliberately focused for where I'm at, not where I hope to be. It's great to have ambition. It's great to hope. It's great to see drawings and think, I'm going to draw like that or better than that one day. Um, that's great. That's tremendous, and it's important. But I need to do it in a way that I stay engaged, that I stay engaged and have fun along the way. I mean, I haven't got to be wetting my pants laughing as I draw, but to have a sense of satisfaction, to have a feeling that I'm getting somewhere. Yeah, I've achieved something. I wasn't at this place and now I am. Um, I look back at my first video drawings and like I obviously thought they were okay drawings because I made YouTube videos of them, but I can see how much my drawing style has developed in just 3 years, and I'm really happy with that, and that encourages me to push forward. And lots of the drawings I've done have been very short ones because I've done hundreds of drawings that are like 10-minute drawings for different. I've got a couple of playlists of if you haven't looked at my playlists, please go and check out what playlists are. Have a look at the sorts of things in them because it will help you navigate. I've got over 1,200 videos on my channel that are in the last 3 years, and um, and so it can help you find ones that are suited for where you're at and what you're interested in doing. So I really recommend that if you haven't. Um, so I spent a lot of time drawing creatures incorrectly, and now I'm stuck drawing like 20 squares. I don't feel like it's fun anymore. Yeah, well, I mean, again, Philip, work out where you want to end up. Have you got a focus of what you want to be able to do, and it might just be for fun, or you might have a greater purpose. You might, if you're talking of creatures, are you wanting to do illustrations for comics, creatures in comics, or for video games, be able to model three-dimensional creatures and stuff? If that's the case, then I possibly you've gone out too hard, too fast, too quickly, and you've realized at some point that you've tripped over, and now you're a bit sore and a bit frustrated and a bit discouraged. But Go back, go back to the start. Go back to where you were happy with your creatures and having fun drawing them, and maybe stay at that level for a while, or find some new input. I mean, you know, it's great that you're watching my channel, but you're not going to get tailored help on drawing creatures from me because I don't draw them. Now, a lot of the general principle stuff is going to be just as applicable to you, but maybe you need to find some help and go backwards a bit and reconnect with what you had in you that made you want to do it in the first place. Um, yeah. Is a G'day, Christy. Andre, is there a trick to see mistakes in the gradient when shading before I finish it? I seem to shade the whole object and then it has some big inconsistencies that I don't see until I see. Okay. Okay. So I guess you're saying getting angles correct, really, regardless of whether we're shading or not, getting angles correct. Well, that's a skill. It's a skill. And you know what? It's a skill that you can practice without a drawing. It's a bit like straight lines. Um, because I draw architecture, there are lots of angles, all these perspective angles. And one thing you can do so easily is when you finish a drawing, and if you draw buildings, you should do this every single drawing until you're confident that you've nailed angles, you know. I mean, I do this all through my drawing when I'm drawing it. And but this is very helpful to do at the end. You get your drawing, you get your reference, you get the drawing, you tape them onto the table so they don't move. It's really important they don't move. And it doesn't matter if you've drawn same size, larger or smaller, because the angles don't change. But you lock them horizontally together, and you get, you can get a ruler, or I often just use a scrap of the edge of a sheet of paper, and you find the angle on the reference, and then you just slide it across onto your drawing and see if the angle's the same. It's so easy to do, and it tells you everything you need to know about whether you need to work at your angles or not. It will tell you exactly whether it's right or wrong. I can't conceive of drawing angles without at some point checking. And if we're drawing on location, we can hold our pen, and you'll see people do this when they're drawing on location. Hold the pen up, shut one eye, hold the pen up, line the angle with whatever angle of the building we're looking at is, and then just bring it straight down onto the paper. And oops, that's a big rock that I've got anchoring in a tripod. Anyway, and side on looks like this. Yep, like this. You just bring it straight down in a clean, crisp motion, and it's incredibly accurate. It looks really bodgy, but it actually is incredibly accurate. So you can do that as well. Thanks, Oz. Thank you. Yeah, because what you need to do is learn to see the inconsistencies or the mistakes when it's just a line before you shade it. And that is a great way that you can do that. As I said, you don't have to be drawing at the same size. But if you're a beginner, I would recommend that you draw same size at the start, simply because it's easier. And you want to make it easy to succeed. If you're not having to juggle scale, if you only have to juggle proportion, it's like juggling with one ball at the start rather than two, let alone bringing 3 or 4 in. So draw the same size if you can. And one way you can help do that is on your paper, put some tape around the actual size. That will give you another reference point. You can actually reference how far something is from the edge as well, which again, just makes it easier to do better drawings at the start. And we talk about having fun. There's no point making it hard for ourselves and giving ourselves unnecessary difficulties to overcome. We want to narrow down to as few as possible the things that we have to work hard at, So we can work hard at just a few things and learn to nail them. And then they become the solid foundation that we can add new things to. And look, the tape I use is just this. It's everywhere. I got little bits like this all over my drawer. They're on the floor. They end up on my socks. They're everywhere. But just it is not. It's just it's. I buy this from our Australian hardware chain. Your is it Home Depot in the States? Something like that. Um, um, Bunnings is our equivalent, I think. It's just the tape you use when you paint a room and you put it on the glass or you the edging for the skirting boards or something. So it's not it's just couple of dollars. It's a low adhesive tape, so it's not meant to have much stick, and so it doesn't tear the paper. In winter, it's more likely to tear the paper if you tear it quickly. But if there's any doubt, just get a little a hand hair dryer, and warm the tape just to soften the glue, the adhesive, before you take it off. Um, okay, thanks, Dave. Dave's just saying always have the reference to the side, not above or below. Yep, it's never occurred to me to not put it to the side, but yeah, helpful point. Also, would you lift your head up or down? Yeah. I mean, what we see is determined by the angle of our head, the position of our eyes. So that's the level of our eyes. So there's eye level in perspective, or the horizon line, but also tilting our head up and down doesn't change eye level. As I explained in a comment the other day to someone on a video, doesn't change eye level, but it does change what we see. And when we look up, eye level is still where our eyes are, but possibly in our photo, eye level is not in the photo. So that's an important thing to remember about eye level. It doesn't have to be in our image. And if you've never understood that, that's a good thing to understand. Now, what point? Okay, point 5. And I'm going to whiz through these quickly, but feel free to ask questions. Oh, what happened to my finger? Just I don't know. I was cleaning something in the kitchen. The filter out of the oven fan thing, and I ran my hand along an edge that had a sharp edge of metal, and I just gouged a big horseshoe shaped, I don't know, cut deep into my index finger. That was about a week and a half ago. So yeah, it's not so bad now. But the fifth point, need to understand, as well as developing dexterity and learning to put the ink where I want it to go, or the pencil, whatever, I need to start to develop an understanding of the learning of the drawing process, of the learning process and of the drawing process. Because as I talked about this extensively in the first probably 45 minutes of this video. So if you're coming in now, go back and because I think it's very helpful. But what we draw in the end comes from how we're thinking, what we're thinking, and how I understand what drawing is, what's happening in that. Am I just doing a copy, or am I doing something else, or a combination of the two, and or something else, whatever. And it's my understanding of the process of what I'm trying to do when I draw that actually guides me. It gives me the direction. And I have so much found, like one of the big things I have to thank my channel for is that in making these videos and explaining what I'm doing, it's forced me to put so many things into words and therefore to see them more clearly, more sharply than I would have done naturally. And so I'm the first person who benefits, and the person who benefits most from what I say, because I'm teaching myself as much as I'm teaching you. And I'm as I get an understanding of, why am I doing this? What am I trying to do? And how do I say that? I find that I start to be able to use it myself with greater clarity, and greater intent. So that's, yeah. And that it becomes easier to put the marks on the paper because it's my understanding of the drawing process that guides those marks on the paper. And the clearer that is, the more obvious this is. Um, and I never expected that. Um, yeah, okay. Here's point number 6. When you're starting to learn to draw, only draw from life or from photos. Don't try and draw from other drawings. We talked about that earlier because that's copying, which is a different skill. But don't try and draw from your imagination because it's so much harder. And at the start, we want to make it easier for us to score points. And the thing about drawing from imagination is if we I do have a relatively recent video on the difference between drawing from photos and imagination, but basically draw from imagination, I'm drawing from memories I have. Like if I say draw an, oxyronk, you can't because you don't know what it is, and or at least you don't know what I'm referring to, so you can't connect that subject with any memories, so you can't draw it. If I say draw a tree, you're not going to draw the tree I'm thinking of. You're going to draw a tree that's connected to memories of trees that you have. And if you love trees and you observe them in great detail all the time, you're probably going to be able to draw a better looking tree, a more realistic tree than someone who has no interest in trees and they're just part of the background of life and have never really observed them that carefully. So um, when I draw from imagination, I have to have put the memories in there and I can only use what I've got. And I have a lot of different, it's not like drawing from one photo. I have a lot of different memories of different types of trees in different times of year, in different positions, different distances. Which ones am I using at this point and how does that change things? It's a lot more complex. So the thing is, I can't draw from imagination until I've I think of because I'm old, I guess I think of the brain like a filing cabinet. I have to have filed away the photos, my memories, and then I rummage through the drawer when I want to draw something from imagination and I find one or maybe a couple and I combine it. This is how I understand drawing from the imagination. So I obviously, if there's nothing in the filing cabinet or they're not very good photos, I've got nothing to work from. But even if I've got lots, I can't actually see it in front of me. It's going to be far more challenging to draw it well. And so if you want to draw, if you want to use your drawing, if you want to use your drawing in a way that you have to draw from imagination, that's great. But start to draw as much as you can of those subjects from life from every angle, because what you want to do is when you draw it, you're going to force yourself to look at the references more closely, and you're trying to put as much in your filing cabinet as you can, so that when you're drawing only from the filing cabinet, you've got as many good quality images stored in there as possible. Oh, welcome, Nancy. Thank you for that. Now I have my scars ingrained too. Yes. Sounds. I'm getting a little bit hoarse, so I will start to wind this up. Okay. Point number 7, we need to mark our work. I bang on about this all the time, but when I finish, big mistake is I get up and I leave and I don't think about that drawing again unless I think it looks great and I want to show people. But what I need to do is finish the learning cycle that I'm in, or else I've wasted pretty much that learning cycle. I need to look at it and say, what's worked? What hasn't worked? It's not just finding faults. It's finding things that I think that's really good. That technique worked really well. I did it differently there, and I think it's better because now I can focus on either using those things in the next drawing or not using them in the next drawing. And I can even choose a subject if I want to help me consolidate something that worked well, to give me another chance. Or I might actually, and I have done this a few times, I might actually look at my drawing and think, yeah, it's okay, but now now that I've done this, I feel like I've learned how I could make it a lot better. Well, do it again and put that into practice and make it better. And really, that's a real turbo learning, I think, when we redraw something, because when we've critiqued our drawing, we see all these things that worked, but we could work them better, things that didn't work that we could leave out. Redrawing the same drawing is an immensely powerful way, I think, to fast track your improvement. But you've got to have that critiquing. You've got to have the focus. Just redrawing it for the sake of redrawing it is of not any sort of great value. Okay, point number 8: choose few resources. Don't watch 100 YouTube channels, because everyone comes from a different direction, and you just can't combine them all together. And what's going to happen is some dude's going to get you going one way because they understand the drawing process one way. Someone else is going to be coming from a different direction. And you're just going to get caught doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and not even realizing that's what's happening, because you don't know enough to know at this point. And so, no, you know, sometimes when I was in high school, we'd have 2 teachers for one subject, but it was never as productive as when you just had one teacher, because in the end, you just never got through as much because you were just getting a bit lost in between the gaps. So choose a few, and you haven't got to stick to the same ones forever, but for what you're trying to achieve in your drawing at that point, if you find 1 or 2 teachers who line up with that, then stay in that place with them until you feel you've gained everything there is to gain from their channel, and then find another channel. Okay. Okay, number 9: finish every drawing. And if you haven't hit the like button yet, please do that for me. But finish every drawing. Okay, there's three very good reasons for this. First one, every drawing has a tempo, has a rhythm. I think I touched on this earlier in a different point. You know, we have our starting point, which is slower, more considered. And then as we establish reference points and we come to see we've observed our reference more, we gain more confidence, we start to move more quickly. And then we often can become very gestural towards the end. On the periphery, we're not quite so bogged down in detail. So there's a rhythm, there's a tempo, and that's part of the drawing process. If I don't finish my drawing, I never experience the full tempo, the full rhythm, which again is partly a thing that helps guide the techniques that I use, is the natural rhythm that sets up within one drawing. This is another reason why we should finish our drawings in one drawing session. Actually, I think that's when I mentioned it earlier. Yeah, because we mess up the rhythm otherwise. But the second reason why we should always finish our drawings is there are lots of skills that we only use in the second half of the drawing. Therefore, there are lots of skills we only learn and develop in the second half of the drawing. So if I never do the second half of the drawing, I ain't learning them. And that's going to really be a problem for me. And let me say, the second half of the drawing is the fun half of the drawing. It's where things start to loosen up and lighten up. And if I never get to the second half of the drawing, because I always start to draw things that are too complex on too large a scale, and so they're going to take hours, even if I could do them well, then that's my mistake. I need to do simpler things that I can finish in the time that's available for me, or the time that I can stay focused in. You know, we all have different stamina. And again, you know, when we start, I don't know, when we start jogging, some of us can jog further than others, but none of us can jog as well and for as long as we will be able to do further down the track. Drawing's the same too. If you can't finish your drawings, then you're doing the wrong drawings the wrong way. So important to develop the second half skills. And thirdly, if I don't finish a drawing, I can't critique it. I can't mark my work, and so I don't know where I should go on in the next drawing, because it's the last drawing that gives me that guidance. Um, okay, point number 10. This could be a little controversial. Um, don't erase mistakes when you're learning to draw, even if you're learning to draw with pencil. One of the most unhelpful things that happens when people start to learn to draw is they think they're producing artworks. We're not. We're learning to draw. No one who sits down to learn the piano thinks that they should have asked the neighbors in because they're giving a piano concert performance. Then why do I think when I start to learn to draw, I'm producing artworks that somehow have to be frame worthy? And therefore, I have to work so hard to get them right because they're an artwork, and artworks have to be perfect. We would never think this way with learning another thing, another creative thing. Yet somehow with art, we put this pressure on us, which is so counterproductive to learning well. And it puts our focus on fear of mistakes rather than on learning to explore the possibilities. And that's where our future is exploring the possibilities. It's making the mistakes. If I put a line in the wrong place, don't erase it, because that line in the wrong place, it sets me up to see exactly where the line should be. That angle's not right. Should the actual line be higher angle or a lower angle? And now, using that line as a reference, I can put the right line in, the correct line, the more helpful line in. Mistakes are our friends. They guide us to putting marks and lines in the right places, the helpful places, the places we would have liked to have put them in the first place. What I also learn, if I don't erase them, is that by the end of the drawing, most of them don't matter. But I also learn whatever techniques I can use to hide them. And that's a skill to learn. It's very important to learn how to deal with our mistakes, firstly, in our head. And secondly, um, the technical things, the options that we have, that in my experience of making mistakes in every single drawing I do. And if they're a big enough mistake, I always point them out because it's an opportunity to teach, an opportunity to learn. Look, this line's not right, but look, I've hidden it now. Isn't that nice? I'm able to shift the shadow over to here, or I'm just able to make it a darker value like a local color. And now you can't see it, whatever. So yeah. And if we keep erasing mistakes, besides the fact that it ends up being a very negative experience, we break the rhythm, that natural drawing tempo that I've talked about a few times in this session, and let me know in the chat if this is you. It feeds my perfectionism. One of the reasons I switched to drawing directly in ink was because I could see that my natural perfectionism was actually getting worse the better I became at drawing. The better my drawings were looking, the more demanding I began to be that they look better still. And therefore, I developed better observation to compare what I'd done with the reference. And instead of me being happier with my drawings, I became more and more unhappier and erasing everything that wasn't perfect and then redrawing it, erasing it, redrawing it. Sometimes I felt my drawings were sort of stuck in reverse rather than a forward gear for longer. And part of the way I responded to that was thinking, well, if I draw directly with a pen, I have to keep pushing on. I can't go back, can't erase it. I either tear it up or I get over it. And I've learned how to get over it. Really important skill. And for some personalities, that's more important than others. So if that's you, just try only drawing with a pen for a month. But also get the mindset, I am not producing an artwork. I'm learning to draw. And unless I'm doing a commission, a paid commission for someone, it doesn't matter if I make a mistake. I need to embrace it as a learning experience, because you will make less mistakes if you embrace them as learning experiences. And you'll also learn how to overcome most of them in the second half of the drawing. Another reason to do the second half of the drawing, because we don't normally hide the mistakes in the first half. It's when we're doing all the hatching and we're pulling things together and making the final adjustments. That's usually when I end up doing the ink on the paper that will hide the lines that aren't quite right. Boomer talking about mistakes his whole life. I'm not looking to reply, just talking to any boomer. Oh, okay, because I'm a boomer, as my children keep telling me. Yeah, boomers are blamed for totally messing up the Sydney real estate. Oh, yes, you are talking about houses. Yeah, well, look, it's not our fault. I didn't do it. I still had to buy a house. I had to pay for it. But equally, I've got 4 kids, and it's not like I'm not concerned about the real estate market as well. But this is totally this isn't pre-recorded, D. I'm talking to you now. At what point would you know that it's time to stop and take lessons in perspective or other technicalities? Yeah, that's a good question. Look, I think when you realize that you've been critiquing your work as best you can, you've been asking friends, does this look right? And you can see that there are problems that you just can't push through yourself. That's when a little bit of targeted, as in for you, external advice may help. I mean, I do this sort of thing, but I do charge for that. All my videos are free, and everything I've got to say on drawing is free. I don't hold anything back for a paid course, nothing behind a firewall or for special people. But I do charge for kind of critiquing and targeted. But a lot of people just have one critiquing session that lets me just do that. Lets me say, look, these are the areas I think you could work on, and this is how you could work on them. That can be helpful. Yeah. But it hasn't got to be like a proper art teacher. It could be a friend who can give you direction, or it could be a friend who draws, who's more aware of some of the issues and some of the possibilities. It's really good if we draw to be in a drawing community, to connect with other people who draw. It doesn't have to have a teacher, doesn't have to have a course. You could just get together once a month somewhere and just take whatever you're working on and just sit there together and draw it and chat. But that does give the chance to, oh, what are you doing? Oh, what are you doing? And yeah, if you could be free with helping each other with opinions, aware that they're opinions, that can be encouraging and helpful in lots of ways. Thanks for the video and the answers, just in case I don't make it back for the end. Oh, Dave, goodness, such longevity. You've been there for 2 hours. Well done. It's probably only me who's been here longer. Where's the bit of paper that's got the last 2? Oh gosh, I thought I had it, and I don't. I don't have 11 and 12. 12 is have fun. I remembered that, and I told you earlier. I don't know where the bit of paper has got 11. But these 12 points are actually in the video that I posted yesterday, which is called, let me just, I'm just having a look to tell you what the title is. The Learn to Draw Faster and Better. Hang on. Let me go to content. Type. Learn to draw faster and better, 12 ways to accelerate and improve for drawing beginners. And the thumbnail says, it took me hundreds of drawings to learn this. It will take you 17 minutes, which is the length of the video. So please, check that out. It's doing better than most of my videos do in the first 24 hours. So that's encouraging. So if you want point 11, I'm afraid you'll have to go there. Yeah. Okay. Well, probably a good point to start to wind up. Are there any final questions? If you haven't hit the like button, please do. It'd be great to get to 60 likes. If there's 3 of you who haven't already colored in that little thumbs up. Any final questions before I go? My wife's not home yet, so I'm not being hurried off. Any thoughts of directions I could go for videos that you think perhaps I haven't made? Or maybe I could tell you if I have or where you might find them? Anything like that? It's quite a chilly summer's day in Sydney, Australia today. It's quite cool. Is there a point where you just give up? Well, we don't have to draw. We don't have to, but I think it's very helpful. I think it's very helpful to try and work out why. Because if like, we don't have to draw. Nothing. Drawing doesn't make me any better or worse than anyone else who does or doesn't draw. Um, so I draw for my own reasons. I draw because there's something I can achieve um, through it. Maybe I it's going to be helpful for a job I want to have, or I do it for pleasure. But either way, um, either way, I get to choose. So if I start drawing, there was obviously enthusiasm and or purpose for that. Try and go back to that place. If and work out, when did it become not fun and why did it become not fun? What changed? Um, what changed? Yeah. Did I reach a point where I didn't feel I was improving the way I had? In which case, well, what point was that? And why wasn't I improving? Did I change what I was trying to do and it didn't work? Or did I try and go too hard too quickly? Was there a particular experience that discouraged me? Did I do something and someone laughed at it and it really hurt me? It can be that sort of thing too. Like, or is it just that I'm not seeing the improvement? If I'm not seeing the improvement, then the problem is not my drawing, but it's the learning process that I'm on. That's going to be the problem. I need to restructure what I do and how I do it. But in general terms, Philip, I would say that if we want something to change, then we need to change something. So continuing to do things the same way that you're doing them now is probably going to be discouraging for all the same reasons it is now. So I'd be saying, okay, I'm going to stop drawing in pencil. I'm going to just play around with ink without expectations and see if I can find the fun again. Or, okay, I'm not going to do these drawings that take me 4 hours. I'm going to do 20 to 30-minute max drawings. And I don't care how they turn out. I'm just going to work at finishing them in that time and see how that goes. Like anything that because there's doubtless all these ways of thinking and of putting the ink or the pencil, whatever, onto paper that aren't working for you, and you need to shake them up. So having a time pressure, an external time pressure that pushes you even faster than you want to go, that can make you change things. That forces you to have different drawing habits, and yeah, they can all help. Um, Not draw for a while. Say, look, I'm not going to draw for this month, but I'm going to think about drawing and I'm going to plan to draw. I'm going to find things to draw and maybe look at a whole range of resources to get some different input. But I'm not going to draw, no matter how much I want to draw, until March the 15th. Something like that. That may be very helpful. Again, it's all to do with disconnecting from the experience that you've had and the place that you're in now, because that's clearly not a helpful one. I don't know. Are they helpful, Philip? Um, uh, okay. Thanks, Shaya. Glad you could join us. Hope you have a good day as well. Oh, we got over 60 likes. Thank you. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, that's great. Glad to help, Philip. I think you made a comment, didn't you, about this on one of my videos just recently, didn't you? And I am going to, well, I was going to reply. Maybe I just do a smiley face now, but if it is you, but I was just holding off while I had enough time until I had enough time to actually put a considered comment there. It can get very hard with the comments. So I feel terrible every time I don't answer a comment, but there is an overwhelming number now. But I try and kind of make sure that I answer as many as I can. Yeah, and just keep bouncing till you find a place that's a happier place for you with the drawing. Yeah, if the changes you make don't seem to work, make some others. I really suggest you watch yesterday's video, the one I just talked about, the 12 ways to improve, because a lot of those points will give you ideas of how you might change what you're doing, and that's probably helpful for you at this point to have some outside ideas of how to change. Um, because we can get into very intense places within our own minds. And as I said, part of the reason I switched to drawing with ink was to try and crack on the head the perfectionism that I could see was getting worse and worse, and that was really making drawing a pretty tense and unpleasant experience. So yeah. Um, okay. All right. Any more questions, or will we leave it there? All right, we'll leave it there. And 17 past midday here in Sydney, Australia. I'll go and have some lunch. And look, whatever you do and whatever steps you take in doing it, and particularly if it's drawing, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.